Okay, the board did meet in closed session this evening. That was one of the reasons why we have a little bit of a delay in our open session start, and we had some technical issues. So here we are. Trustee Aguila, can you report out the closed session items, please?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So the first item that we discussed in closed session was public employees discipline dismissal - release. And that was information only. Second item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, conference with legal counsel pending litigation, Coalition to Save San Marin versus Nevada Unified School District, Marin County Superior Court case number CIV 1702295, and we gave direction. Next item we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, Employees Organization, California School Employees Association, and that was information only. Next item we discussed pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and that was Employees Organization, Nevada Federation of Teachers, and that was information only. And next item, respect to every item, next item that we discussed in closed session tonight was the pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, Jonathan Ferrer, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, Employees Organization, Management / Unrepresented, and that was information only. Next item we discussed pursuant to Government Code 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Superintendent. And Superintendent Chris Koska has been presented with his evaluation as satisfactory evaluation. So congratulations. And that was it for closed session today.
Thank you. Moving on to approval of our agenda this evening. There's no changes. It stands as is.
Correct.
So
I will move approval of tonight's agenda.
Okay, so first by Trustee Nell, second by Trustee Millerick. All those in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, 6-0, 1 absent. And just the one absent is Trustee Gasson. She hasn't joined us yet. I'm sure she will shortly here. And otherwise the rest, obviously the rest of the trustees are here. Consent items, we have nothing, no public comment regarding consent. Is there any trustee that would like to pull anything on consent? Okay, seeing none. Approval of our consent agenda. Okay,
I'll move the consent agenda.
Oh, okay, so Trustee Nell is a first. You'll second it. Trustee Mack is a second. All those in favor to approve our consent agenda? 7-0. Okay. Announcements, board members, I'll just go down the line. Trustee Millerick.
One quick, in last week's meeting, we were talking about some financial issues. I used some inappropriate language and I talked to somebody about that. It was my mistake. I apologize. I said it publicly. I'm apologizing publicly, and hopefully that is the last time I make such a foolish error.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Millerick. And I think that's just a reminder to all of us trustees in a statement or phrase or a word that we use, just to be careful of what we're saying and acknowledge if you do by accident to acknowledge that. So thank you for doing that, Trustee Millerick. All right, Trustee Now, any announcements?
No announcements or comments tonight.
Okay, Trustee Gasson?
The only thing I wanted to mention is the Marin County Office of Education and the Zoom Facebook sessions that they've been doing. I found those really helpful. I unfortunately missed the one today that they did on middle schools, but just letting the community know that they are, the sessions can be found at marinschools.org. There's a return to site-based instruction area that you can go to. And the next one is this Thursday at 9 a.m. to go over guidelines related to school reopening. They've compartmentalized into a series of meetings. They're usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and frequently include either Dr. Willis or Dr. Santora. And I've just found them to be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Mack,
No announcements at this time.
trustee Cooper,
No announcements tonight.
trustee Aguila. No, I'm seeing no, you're on mute. So, all right.
Oh,
I-
sorry. No, not.
Yeah, okay. And I've just been attending webinars or Zooms related to the budget or reentry as it been nonstop. So, and then Superintendent Casca and Yancey did a town hall, so I was able to view that, and it was done very well. So thank you for continuing to do those. They're very beneficial, I think, to our community and our parents and students. So thank you. Superintendent Casca, do you have any announcements?
Yeah, I do. One thing is that we will be having another town hall in the future on reentry. We're working on the scheduling of that right now as things continue to shift. We want to make sure you have the most up-to-date information. So today marks the end of our fiscal year, and in many ways it puts a bow on our school year. It was a challenging one, but I'm proud of how we came through a very difficult time together. While our future is not as clear as any of us would like, I do hope that you will take some time to review the long communication that Assistant Superintendent Carter sent out today. You should have received it via email. If not, you can find it on our Facebook page or on the NUSD COVID-19 website. It contains a great deal of information regarding reentry planning, schedules, opportunities for feedback, an initial chance for you to inform us if you'd like your child to attend school in person or virtually for the year. This is just giving us an opportunity to sort of start figuring out numbers, which helps us figure out staffing. While the plan outlined in today's communication includes some schedules for in-person instruction, we need to acknowledge that we have some work to do with our labor groups around negotiating that. So that just is a shot of where we think we are right now. And we're going to continue to monitor the COVID-19 updates and guidance and orders associated with it. We know that we only have so much control over what our schedules look like. We will be responsive and nimble in the face of this ever-changing situation with a focus on safety for all involved on our campus. Tonight, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics, but one of the most important is our budget. The great news is that we are not going to receive our worst case scenario budget that we were planning for. I'm really thankful that the state of California prioritized education in this year's budget. And while acknowledging that this gives us 1 year to sort of put our house in order and prepare for the real fiscal impacts of COVID-19 on public education in the 21-22 school year. As I've shared many times over the past month, I believe that when everyone comes together and makes some sacrifice, fewer people have to make the ultimate sacrifice of a layoff or the elimination of a program. And I'm pleased that our labor groups have made early commitments to do just that so that we can avoid layoffs of currently occupied positions during the 2021 school year. And I believe that it's with this spirit within our community that'll allow us to move through the challenging times that we have ahead.
Okay, thank you. And just to
Thank you.
reiterate the communication that went out today from Amy, I thought it was done very well, and I encourage everybody, please read them. It has a lot of information. I know it's long, but some of those are going to be that way, especially with the reentry information. There's a lot to put out to the community and to our parents, and it's important that you read through it because it is asking for you to make a decision on what you feel your child or student will be doing for next year, and that's an important decision. So I know I'm getting hit with the college ones for my daughter. They're long, and I hate reading them all, but I have to. So they're there. All right, moving on. To non-agenda public comment, we do have one, and I will ask Ellen to go ahead and read that item.
Thank you. This non-agenda public comment is regarding returning to school, and it's from Vicki Breen. Dear trustees and superintendents, I'm an elementary school teacher in Novato, and I'm writing this letter in the hopes it will be read at the board meeting. I have many concerns and questions about the reopening of elementary schools in the fall. There is no one more eager to return to teaching in my wonderful classroom. After surviving distance learning this past spring, I know teaching in my classroom will be where most learning will take place. I have been waiting for the updated model that was suggested by the district assistant superintendent, but it still hasn't been updated since the last board meeting. Then, when I attended the town hall meeting, it was stated that all elementary students would be returning to school 5 days a week in regular classroom groups of 24 to 30 kids. I was shocked. This was the first time I had heard that was going to happen. As a teacher in the district, I had not been notified or included in this decision. This brings me to my concerns. I understand with the rising COVID cases in California, there's a good chance anything we plan now will change in August. Common sense tells me that 20 to 30 students in a classroom is not safe at all. Even when the health experts say it is so, I don't believe it, and I'm quite sure parents are not going to believe this either. Our youngest students, being the most vulnerable and the hardest to control with physical distancing, will have the hardest time with the rules of reentry. If we have large class sizes, parents will look at this as a major safety risk. More parents would be apt to send their child to school if it looked like we were making an effort to social distance. The younger the student, the more difficult the social distancing is going to be. Having large class sizes are going to be impossible to manage. The second main concern is that there is no possible way for teachers to teach 5 days a week and manage distant learning at the same time. At each board meeting, the assistant superintendent states there will be an option of full-time distance learning along with school-based learning, but never states how this can take place and with what resources. This responsibility cannot be dropped on the teacher. In closing, I know everyone wants children to return to a normal teaching situation, but that is not going to happen because we are in a state of emergency. So how do we keep our teachers and students safe? It may be not to return to the classroom until the COVID numbers go down in California or there is a vaccine. Thank you for your time.
All right, that was our one non-agenda public comment, and we'll make sure that gets to the board along with all of the other public comment we have for the other items on the agenda. All right, moving on to discussion action. Our first item is 12A. This is the budget update and budget stabilization plan. Chris, Yancy.
Hi,
I
Chris.
will start talking while Assistant Superintendent Hawkins pops into the meeting.
All right, I am
There he
here.
is.
Can you give me access to the screen, Chris?
David will give you screen sharing rights now.
Thank you, David.
See, look at how much Yancey's learned since last meeting. This is awesome.
This is a double.
Learning organization,
So
Chris.
exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, before we get into the presentation, I do want to just give one quick shout out. Jennifer Frost, who has served in our business office for almost 20 years and has just been the rock of the business office. Her last day was today. And none of the things that myself or Nancy or the group have done could have been done without the help of Jennifer. And she's going to be sorely missed, but I couldn't not start out with that. All right, so getting into the 2021 budget update, as well as the stabilization plan. So a few key points since our last meeting, which was June 16th. The state did come, the governor and the legislature did come to a compromise last week. We detailed a lot of that in the budget town hall that Superintendent Koska and I did last week. And that compromise was much better than the governor's initial proposed budget in May, which NUSD's budget is based upon. So just to start out, the talk of state takeover right now is off the table as we move forward. The state budget is still worse than the original numbers that we had when we were planning for this budget, and worse than were in the proposed budget from the governor this January before COVID-19. And then the third thing is that I just want to be clear that we are very happy that the state has used kind of all the tricks up its sleeve this year to help K-12 education. A lot of the other departments through the state were not that lucky. CSU, UCs, and the state all took significant cuts moving into this year. And so we are very lucky as it goes statewide. And also that because the state used almost all of the tricks up its sleeve this year, that leaves almost nothing for the 2021-2022 year. So it's important to note that as we go into potentially a fiscal cliff in 2021, 2022, we can't rely on the state to help us out of this one, and we'll have to move forward on our own. So just a couple of highlights from the budget compromise. The first is that our per student funding, which we call our LCFF funding, did not see the governor's 10% proposed reduction. It was, in the final number, was about 2.5% less than the January projections, but definitely happy that that's not the 10%. In terms of other items that are of interest, the state chose to use some of the federal CARES Act funding in terms for learning loss growth, learning loss grants for the district to use. And so these are very restricted funds, and we are still learning all of the potential items that we can use those for, but we do expect them to be very restricted and to be used by December 31st of 2020. So we'll be working on that and getting the board more information as we move forward. And I'll also be getting into that when we talk about our budget stabilization plan. The other thing, this budget by Ed Code would have triggered the ability for districts to initiate certificated layoffs during the summer. And that's because of how much worse it was than the initial budget that was proposed in January. But the compromise that was made at the state level took away districts' power to make layoffs in the certificated ranks, as well as 3 areas in the classified ranks related to COVID. And those would be food service, transportation, and custodial. So those were areas we've never seen restrictions on cuts to be made, but those were part of the final compromise at the state level. Just kind of to put it in summary, with that per student funding not being dropped 10%, we saw an additional net $5.3 million into the district's budget. This is the primary area of relief that we've received since our adopted budget. And so we've gone from about an $8 million deficit, and we've reduced that by about $5.3 million for 2020, 2021. One way that they've avoided more significant cuts is with major cash flow deferrals. We're talking $11 billion across the state, which to NUSD is $10+ million in deferrals across fiscal years. This will increase our borrowing costs as we need to go and borrow money at the end of the year, waiting for the final state payments from this year. Also, like I said, the state used all of the tricks up their sleeve. They used deferrals, like I noted. They used borrowing from special funds, and they also used spending down of some of their reserves. This likely will lead to a financial cliff in 2021, 2022. If any of the other recessions, including the last 5 or 6, are any indication, years 2 and 3 in the recessions are usually even more difficult than the first year from the state revenue standpoint. There are significant additional costs. Some of these will be able to be covered by the federal funding that I noted before, but some of them won't. So we'll continue to look at our ability to use those funds in the most efficient way to cover some of these additional costs that will come in with COVID-19. I noted just a minute ago that we had approximately an $8 million projected deficit at the adopted budget. That adopted budget was including the 10% reduction as proposed by the governor in his May proposed budget. With this updated compromise at the state level, our budget deficit is projected to reduce down to $2.5 million, but still a little less than 3% of our overall budget. In terms of where our fund balance was, our unrestricted fund balance, we're projected to end the current year with about 11% in our unrestricted reserve, including Fund 17, which could cover a little under 6 weeks of payroll costs. When we adopted our budget with the large 10% reduction at the state level, our projected fund balance was down to the state minimum 3%, which could cover a little less than 2 weeks of payroll. Now, with the additional net $5.3 million with the 10% cut not being fully implemented, our projected fund balance is about 8.5%. But probably definitely not sufficient to cover what's coming in 21, 22, and 22, 23. Kind of to go back over the last couple of years, we've already, because of declining enrollment, additional state mandated pension costs, and slowing state funding, we've been making significant budget cuts over the last 3 years. In 2018-19, we formed a budget advisory committee and ultimately approved $2.2 million in reductions. In 2019-2020, we used the work of the Budget Advisory Committee as the basis of our work, and then did extensive outreach to all of our stakeholder groups, and ultimately made an additional $1.8 million in cuts for a total of a little over $4 million over 2 years. And so far in 2020-2021 budget planning, we pursued Measure A, an extension on our current parcel tax, which was unsuccessful. We also restructured our maintenance, operations, and transportation department with a reduction of 2 administrators in that department. And we've been moving forward into the planning for 2020-21 when COVID hit. This is a detail of the areas in which we cut the $4 million over 2018 and 2019 school years. Of the $4 million that was cut, about $1.4 million came from administrative and district office functions. And then about $1.7 million related to declining enrollment through attrition with no changes in our staffing formulas. So what did we do after COVID? After the governor released his budget in May, which included the significant reductions, the board immediately took action to blunt the impact of the financial crisis on NUSD. This included, number one, and most importantly, a hiring freeze. And then secondly, a significant increase in the controls over expenditures, including travel, overtime, conferences, et cetera. We have done extensive communication out to the public, including a thought exchange on the budget, many superintendents' communications, and 2 budget town halls over the last month. And then we're moving forward to the proposed budget stabilization plan for 2020, 2021. So I'm just going to go over the recommendations in the proposed budget stabilization plan, and then I will open it up to questions from the board. So continuing the hiring freeze, the staff is recommending holding 5.2 FTE in positions moving into next year. That includes a classified administration position, the business manager. It includes the athletic director. This is a partial freeze. This would still fill 0.4 FTE at each site, which matches our contract and the previous staffing for these positions before they were increased a few years ago. It includes a vacant elementary prep teacher, which would still allow us to meet our obligations, our preparation obligations under the NFT contract, as well as a vacant crafts worker and groundskeeper positions in our operations departments. In addition to that, the recommendation is to eliminate the additional crossing guard contract that we have. The Transportation Authority of Marin funds approximately the 100 crossing guards countywide in a process where they rank the most dangerous intersections in the county. 21 of those are in Novato. And over the last couple of years, we have increased an additional 4 through a separate contract with the Transportation Authority of Marin. So the recommendation would be to not continue that contract, as well as an emergency preparation consultant contract. We've done a lot of work with them over the years, and we've trained our internal staff to move forward with that. So that's the other recommendation there. One good area is we've gotten in the last couple weeks is confirmation that a grant at the state level, the Strong Workforce Grant, will fund a portion of our MSA and STEM program specialist positions for the next couple of years. So that was a really nice piece of budget news that we got in that area. The last 2 sections include concessions. So we've been working with our labor partners, and we continue to work with them around potential concessions that could avoid layoffs in the area. Those include an 8-day furlough offered by the superintendent, 3 days of furloughs for management, 2 days of furlough for NFT related to PD non-school days, and CSEA furlough days equivalent to the percentage for NFT. So the total of those is 728,000. And then the last relates to federal funds, and I want to clarify on this area is there are several positions that I've noted in the last few budget presentations that due to the Department of Health regulations will not be able to perform the functions of their job duties as they have in the past. And so as we continue to work to see what the 2021 school year looks like and the schedule looks like, we will be able to transition some of those positions in 2020, 2021 in order to do intervention and other learning loss work for our students. So continuing with the employees that we do have on staff and ensuring that they're working to intervene and support our students in this year when the Department of Health regulations might limit what they can do. And so that's actually a significant chunk. That would be using those federal CARES Act grants of approximately $1 million to backfill those positions that we've transitioned to a learning loss function. With that, I am happy to open it up to questions from the board.
Okay, board members. If you could take it so I could see everybody, Yancy, that would be
Yep.
great. And if we have to go back to a screen, that's
No
fine.
worries.
Okay, and board members who, trustee Miller,
Just
and
to
then
be
trustee
clear,
Matt.
Claire Yancey, does that end up with a balanced budget for the 2021 school year?
It leaves a very minor deficit of a little over $100,000, but materially it's a balanced budget for the 2020-2021 year. But what is not included is the continuation of the expenditure controls and the increased scrutiny on the hiring freeze that likely will cover that $100,000 to $150,000. So I am confident that with those additional expenditure controls, that we will, without any other changes to the state budgets or any other significant COVID-related changes, at this time, I believe that would leave us with a balanced budget for 2020-2021 and putting us in the best position moving forward to 2021-2022.
To be clear, in the Great Recession in 2009, we had mid-year budget changes. So your apprehension about the state saying one thing now and something different in 6 months is founded on actual historic fact, not on just fear. So that's a good thing to be concerned with. And your strategy of acknowledging that other higher ed state institutions and state institutions have taken a hit this year, and K-12 and community colleges were protected, and expecting that we won't have the same protections next year. The economy will hopefully pick up, but it's not going to pick up back to where it was. So your guess that it's going to be next year is the year to be really concerned about and getting ready for it now, I appreciate very much. So thank you for the balanced budget. Thank you very much. I know that was not easy to get to.
Trustee Mack and then trustee Cooper. You're muted, Greg.
Thank you. Sorry. Can we pull the screen back up? Just to, I know it's 2 pages though, so maybe just the first one for now. First off, I want to say thank you for putting this together. The fact that we're able to reach a balanced budget, considering what we were looking at just 10 days ago, is amazing. As well, the fact that we're able to take the budget from February that was a 2.5 million, and now we're really gonna get it balanced, shows that we're serious about making this work. So I'm hoping we're sending the right message. I think we are. And I really want to say thank you to staff for really coming up with a plan that makes this work and puts us in the best possible position for next year. Being the optimist that I am, I'm hoping that it's not going to be as bad as we worry the year after, the year 2. But at the same time, we need to be ready for it with every single piece of reserve we can get. So I really appreciate that. With regard to considering this, I do want to request, in fact, really push that we don't just approve these all in one fell swoop. I do believe that some of them require distinct discussion with distinct vote, if you will, on where we stand on some of these items. And you know where at the top of my list, of course, is me, athletic director. So I just want to put that out there as we start considering this, that we go about it that way.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Cooper?
Sorry about that. Yancy, thank you very much again for putting together a balanced budget. This is, has been said already, this is not what we were looking at very recently. I have a question about the federal funds. Is that a certainty, or is that, it's quite a big chunk of money, $1 million? Is that fairly certain we're going to get that?
So I will say that we still have to find out all of the details of those funds. We've been given the general parameters of those, but we are required to put a plan together, brought to the board by September 30th, I believe. Superintendent Koska can correct me, that discusses the uses of those funds.
Okay.
I am confident that there are positions in our budget that we will be transitioning to a learning loss function of at least $1 million in this current year. And as long as the guidance that we have been given to date is correct, then I am very confident that we will hit this with this number.
Okay, because I certainly like the fact that, or it's at this point, we've got to balance our budget. So we've done that with this money, but I want to make sure maybe we have a contingency, or we should have a contingency plan if those funds do not materialize. So let's start thinking in those terms. And I know you are. And Chris, I know, or could you talk briefly about additional cuts, specifically school closure? Are we as a board going to be looking at that? And then give me a timeline.
Yeah, so school closure is the school closure conversation is very dependent upon enrollment typically. This year we saw an uptick of enrollment of about 150, 160 students, mostly at the TKK level. So we know that enrollment usually starts to stabilize in October. And so we will be reviewing the enrollment in October, and we'll be in a position to bring forward a recommendation to you, not about a specific school, but about exploring the possibilities of school closure or not exploring the possibilities of school closure in October.
Very good, thanks.
I would like to add that this budget gets us through to the 2021-2022 year, and as Trustee Cooper noted, some of those funds, including those federal funds, we can't be using them twice. So we will have significant difficult decisions to be made, and we'll be going through a process that may include what Superintendent Koska noted about reviewing our enrollment and looking about our number of sites, but they'll also include a lot of other discussions. I expect there to be significant budget reductions needed in the 2021-2022 year, but this budget puts us in the best position to face those head on with the least impact to our students.
Trustee Down.
Thanks. Okay, so thanks for coming up with the plan. I mean, it is a plan, and there's definitely, I see a lot of uncertainty here. I have clarification questions. I think we should probably discuss this in a little more detail. On the second page of your proposal, we can start with the concession subject to negotiation might be the question. You want to define that a little bit more, and then under classified layoffs, if I understand this, we avoided it with concessions, but if they're not finalized, are we looking at a $750,000 hit? So let's just, whatever order, whichever one you want to take first, but I think we need to talk about this level of certainty, or what are the, exactly how is this going to go down the negotiations?
So we continue to work with our labor partners on this, and given the state budget's moratorium on certain cuts, we were limited to classified reductions for the 2020-2021 year outside of those three areas that I noted around COVID positions: food service, transportation, and custodial. So we have identified up to $750,000 of additional cuts if needed. We've worked with CSEA around those as they are to the classified unit, and they've given a lot of input into that. We're hopeful, obviously, that we don't need to move forward with that, but those are the only areas that we have. To be clear, we have a 60-day notice that is required in classified layoffs. So there's not the same, March 15th or August 15th dates that we've been talking about for our other groups, specifically our certificated employees and our certificated management employees. So we do have that 60-day window all throughout the year. So we will have that open to us as we move forward.
So you're essentially saying that there's a list behind the 750,000 that we may be going to if we need to.
Yeah, we do have that. We also, as Trustee Millerick noted, we are continually watching the state budget. We did see mid-year reductions in the Great Recession. And so, while this plan avoids those layoffs because of the wonderful work of our partners on this, we may have to use those for various reasons if revenue doesn't come in or we're not able to finalize some of these agreements.
Or if we find other priorities that we think are higher importance, and we'd rather keep those things running, and then we can see if we can have some flexibility. What about the subject to negotiations? What's the timing, or what can we expect there? How much certainty is involved with the plan that get up to 728,000 in furlough day concessions? Is it concessions?
Yes, they absolutely would be concessions that our labor partners would be offering up in this crisis. And so our assistant superintendent of HR would be working with each unit if we move forward with this budget stabilization plan tonight. And he will be working with them over the next few weeks to hopefully finalize some agreements. If additional items are needed, we would come back to the board either at the July 14th meeting or at the first meeting in August.
So let's hypothetically, with one of these 3 bargaining units, management, NFT, CSCA, says no. Where does that means we have to take the subtraction out of the stabilization plan to come up with cuts elsewhere?
Staff would bring back additional recommendations for reductions either at the July 14th or first meeting in August if we can't finalize those agreements, correct?
So those additional cuts, are we going to bring those out in the open before we make a final decision on this budget?
We would.
Okay. All right, so those are my clarification questions. I do have a comment about the athletic director. I think that's penny wise, pound foolish. I think it opens up the district to severe liability exposure, not to mention the service and the services provided to students and families. But I've been down this road before, and we really have tried this on more than one occasion, and it does not work. I'm sure the board knows this already. So if there's more suggestions elsewhere, and we're already dealing with a lot of uncertainty and maybe with this plan, I think we need to have more contingencies in place and possibly a reprioritization of these things. But currently I can't support that one particular cut in the form that it's in right now. So my comments and questions for now.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Nell. Was there anybody else? Trustee Gasson.
So thank you, Nancy. I'm happy to see that at least we're doing a balanced budget here, and with the ideas proposed, and some of the things not being certain yet. My question revolves around our expense side, and obviously with COVID and needing to have a lot of adjusting staff and having a lot of cleaning supplies and extra supplies, partitions and what have you, where does that fall in the expenses side of things? Is that being adjusted for already, and then these cuts are going to compensate for that piece too.
So in terms of that, there's a couple of things that's working. SB 117, which was passed in March, gave the district some ability to spend funding about $117,000 on PPE, EPE, technology resources, including the wireless hotspots that we've provided to almost 100 families, as well as food service support, as we've been serving about 20,000 meals a week to the community. So there's that funding that's available. The state in its budget also included PPE and EPE that is going directly to county offices of education and being delivered to school districts. So those won't be funds that are provided, but they will be equipment that will be provided. So that'll provide some of the EPE and the personal protective equipment that that we will need. And then the other federal funding that we will receive that will equal at least a few $1,000,000 will cover the majority, is our goal, is to cover the majority of the additional costs. So this budget stabilization plan is for our operating budget for this year, and the federal funds, along with those other funds that I spoke of, our goal is to use those as effectively as possible to cover a lot of the things that you noted, including protective equipment.
Okay, perfect. The other thing is the crossing guards, because I'm part of the Safe Routes to School. I know which there's four that we pay for that. I'm just wondering, I don't recall, when do they do the analysis? Do they do that every year to determine what ranking those sites are?
I believe they do it every 3 or 4 years. They update it, but they also will update if a intersection is requested to be reviewed. They review those in the interim, and so they do those on an ongoing basis in between. I believe the last time it was done was about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And the review was done.
Yeah, no, I know it was recent. I neglected to find out how often they redo that, and because I know that it's a shame that they can't supply all funds for all of the locations that we have. So that's a little bit of a concern for me. At least one of the sites that I know we have a crossing guard, which would not then be funded. And I think that we have to really focus on kids' safety. So that I'm a little hesitant about the entire amount on that one, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Miller?
Get off of mute, pardon me. Yancy, just to confirm the number you just said, you said we serve 20,000 meals a week.
In the COVID, we were given a waiver in order to serve supper, which increased our numbers to over 20,000 meals a week.
So a child comes in and picks up a breakfast, lunch, and a meal, and because of the Novato School District and the funding we get for COVID and our business partners, we're feeding that many meals every week in the Novato community.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So for all of this budget conversation that we're able to do, there are people some people are getting laid off, and some people they're losing rent, and some people don't have enough food at home. And Novato School District, as a community agency, in the face of all of the other issues we're dealing with here, is systematically making sure there's kids at home that have enough food. So when they come back to school, they haven't not just lost some time, they've lost their ability to grow. So I just think that's an extraordinary number in the face of what we're being challenged with, that we're able to deliver to the community. And I'm going to call it out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Miller. One question I have, just some clarity on the athletic directors. It's clearly, obviously, important to this community, important to this board, from what I can tell and from what I know from past conversations. We've had it, we've not had it, now we brought it back full time. We obviously, I think this board voted on all of us voted for it to bring it back full time. Can you just provide how you got to this conclusion to do a 0.4? Who'd you talk to? Who, the conversations you've had, and going forward, how do we see a full-time position being filled in the 0.4, the job that it takes?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the first part in terms of 0.4 is our contract with NFT envisions a 0.4 FTE with a stipend. And that for years, that's how it was funded. That 0.4 and stipend is funded currently by our parcel tax, the Measure A that was generously approved by our community. The additional 0.6 that was added, I believe right before I got here, was funded out of the general fund, unrestricted side of the budget. And so both of those positions are currently unfilled with those, the two folks who are in those positions doing a great job, having made the decision to move back into the classroom. So they were open positions that we were looking at during the hiring freeze. When we went back and we looked at the work of our budget advisory committee and the work of our outreach for the 2019-20 year, reducing the athletic directors on both of those had some broad support around the budget advisory committee and in the results that came from each of the stakeholder groups in our surveys for the 2019-20 reduction. In fact, they made it to the final list of proposed reductions for the 2019-20 year. The board made the decision to hold back on that reduction at the time. And I believe we added some other smaller reductions to add up to that amount to cover those costs. So that's where we've gone. We've gone to our stakeholder groups. We've talked to our partners and gone back to our work we've done over the last 3 years around that. And those continued to move to the top of our list. Definitely not any kind of, it's very important work. It's crucial to some of the things that we do. But the 0.4 plus, I believe, a stipend in the amount of 27% of something, it's complicated, but of a salary schedule placement that is given is the amount that we would recommend moving it down to.
And then have you talked to the principals, or have you gotten some feedback? Have you presented this to the sites, and what are their thoughts on this?
Obviously, the sites are never going to be excited about reductions at their site. They believe that this will be a loss to their site. But staff believes that if it's not this, it's going to be another reduction that would be a loss to a program or a support for our sites that's there, and especially given the nature of what we are able to do, given the restrictions of the state. That one came to the list.
Trustee Millerick?
So on the athletic director issue, to be clear, the 0.4 that we're keeping, that your proposal keeps, is funded by the parcel tax.
Correct.
So if at some point we get to the point where the parcel tax is in question, then that all becomes in question. We just voted on the parcel tax in the community, and that was, we have another 2 years that it runs, but that 0.4 also gets to be in question if those additional funds are in question. That's fair.
Correct.
So I voted in favor of full-time athletic directors. I watched the program run when we did not have we had volunteer athletic directors, and I believe those are important positions, but we have to have a balanced budget. We have to be able to run our own district. We have to make the hard choices now. So my view of this is we take the 0.4, we take athletic directors to 0.4, we follow your recommendation. And then next year, we still have some very hard decisions to make. Where the cuts are going to be deeper next year than this year. And then we need to go back and have the conversation with the community to make sure we have the funds to keep these programs in place that people are standing up for. And I would hope that the athletic directors are in part of that program. But in the short run, we have to have a balanced budget. We have not had a balanced budget for the last few years, and reserves that I wish we had right now, we don't have. And we are not going to be standing on our own if we don't make these tough cuts. So this to me is a short-term solution that we have to get through the next 2 years. And as we rebuild, I expect us to rebuild back to a full-time athletic directors, but I don't see how we can hold them now. So I will vote to drop it to the staff's recommendation to 0.4. But I don't think that's where we end up in Nevada. I think we end up someplace else in a couple of years, and it's just going to take some hard work.
Trustee Cooper?
Trustee Mack, do you want to go first? I know you raised
Oh,
your hand.
sorry, I didn't see his hand. I apologize. You're muted.
Sorry. Tom, why don't you go ahead first because you haven't spoken yet.
Okay. Quick question, Yancy. Have we looked, I'm sure you have, so have you looked at other districts, high school districts in Marin County, kind of see where they are in this as far as the athletic directors?
Yeah,
all have
and Superintendent Koska can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I believe we were the only public school, at least, I haven't looked at private schools, that have a full-time athletic director at the high school. They're all staffed in a little bit different at TAM and at San Rafael, but I believe we were the only district with full-time athletic directors.
Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. And just to reiterate kind of Debbie's question about the sites, have the principals, specifically the two principals, what's their feedback?
Want me to talk to that, Jens?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
I want to make sure I understand the question. The question was, how are the principals feeling about this reduction, or the idea of this reduction?
Yes.
Okay. They are, as Yancy said a few minutes ago, they understand that these positions are really important, and particularly at one of the schools, there's massive support that this is a critically important position to all things around school culture on that campus. There's an acknowledgement that we all come to these times in our budgets where we have to feel the pain, and we have to have a plan B, and the plan B means that that some of the administration has to pick up some of this work that is really quasi-administrative work that's done by the athletic directors, and funded in large part by that stipend that allows them to do this significant work outside of time. So they don't love this idea, they don't want this to happen. But they also understand that we're in difficult fiscal times, and they'll support the decision of the board whichever way that goes.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if there's nobody else, I'm going to go to public comment. Trustee Nell?
Well,
Trustee Mack, I'm sorry.
Trustee Cooper's question was about comparison to other districts, and I would like to ask staff to double check on that, because they may not have a full-time position, but they have a combination of certificated and or classified, or in some cases maybe classified handles a larger bulk of it. My point being, we are going to suffer serious consequences if we think we can run these two athletic programs with the number of students who participate with part-time participation at the leadership level. We have been at this before. Confidentiality rules don't let me say out loud, but again, I will repeat myself, the exposure and the liability to poorly run athletic programs could end up costing the district millions of dollars. So if we're going to have athletic programs, we can't be irresponsible about how we go about operating and running them for the safety of the students and the participants. And I'm not even making the arguments of all the good that they do in character development and fulfilling our culture of caring and everything else that is important about a co-curricular activity like this. And as far as we have to make hard cut decisions, a lot of this proposal is, quite frankly, smoke and mirrors based on what the feds may or may not do, what the state may or may not do, what our own bargaining units may or may not do. But when it comes to the athletic director position, we're talking about certainty. And when the question was asked by President Butler, how are we going to handle the workload? How have you guys got that figured out? We didn't get that answered. What we got was we went to the sites and they're going to take it because that's what we're going to tell them to do. But I really didn't hear how we're going to get 10 hours a day worth of work accomplished on a regular basis while we're running these athletic programs without the exposure to the liability. So I really think that this is penny wise, pound foolish, and with a budget plan that we're looking at here that's so up in the air, let's have some certainty. Let's lock down our ADs and let's find the $100,000 somewhere else.
So I'm going to push back on some of those comments.
Sure.
The smoke and mirrors comment about this budget, I think I find that offensive to myself and all the people that have done this work on this budget. We've worked with our labor groups to come up with concessions to the tune of, I don't know how much. I don't have it right here.
$25,000.
So, that is not smoke and mirrors. We have commitments from those labor partners. If one of those labor partners falls through, then we have a backup plan in the form of a cut list from CSEA. So none of that is smoke and mirrors. When we talk about the federal money, we are confident that we can move $1 million worth of positions into that federal fund. We believe that it can be more than that. So that's where the squish factor is, on the upside, not on the downside. So we will achieve these numbers. We have brought some recommendations to you that's come from a long history of our fiscal budget reduction processes, including the budget advisory process and including last year's survey. So what we've done is we've looked back at that information. We brought this recommendation forward, but this is not based on smoke and mirrors. This is based on our historic data here in time. It's based on concession from our labor partners, and it's based on our ability to move those positions into those federal funds, probably north of $1 million.
So Superintendent Koska, I'll concede that smoke and mirrors is a figure of speech and probably should be taken more seriously in light like this. So I'll concede that maybe it was an improper use of the words, but I think the emphasis I was making was there's really a lot of uncertainty in these projections. We don't have signed labor agreements. Now, I know you say you're working hard and you think it's going to happen, and that will be great. When it comes to the federal funds, I really think that's unpredictable. And I also, we talked a little bit about PPE, the cost of the COVID. I think that's a number that is hard to nail down, and I hope that we're going to have enough funds to cover that as well. But that's something else that also concerns me. So I didn't mean any offense, Superintendent Koska. I sincerely want you to know that I'm very concerned about the recommendation around the athletic directors and the liability and the cost that we're going to be putting upon our families and our students with this decision. And I know there's hard decisions to be made, but maybe we can make some harder ones, or we can look somewhere else, is what I'm suggesting.
Yep.
And I asked, there seems to be a list beyond this list, because when I asked the CFO, if these don't come through, what are we going to do? So here's a fifth item that I think is unsound, and I really think it's a bad idea. So let's bring some other ideas forward.
So the next level of cuts beyond this is laying off filled classified positions to the tune of whatever dollar amount we need to get to. So just, that's where we go from here, more than likely.
Well, my number one priority, my fiduciary responsibility, is to that of the students and their families, not the employees who work here.
I'm just, Derek, you asked where we go from here, and I'm just sharing with you where we go from here.
So I think that I'd like to see those things before I vote on a budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Mack, then trustee Gasson.
Yeah, I'll just say it out front. I do not support cutting the ADs down to part-time, down to 0.4. One point to make clear, just for clarity, I confirm that TAM Union, their ADs are 0.8. So double what's proposed. And they do have clerical support on top of that. So definitely not 0.4. But, you know, let's just talk about what we've seen today, right? Dozen of emails. And as always, I read all of them, but here's some comments that really stand out. So for instance, during our time at NHS, before full-time ADs, our one regret was the void in support for the athletic program at the high school. The AD was in 2 hours a day, if that, and there was absolutely no way to manage or organize all the athletic teams or respond to MCAL demands. Another quote, if you have a 40% person, it means you will end up with a C+ talent because no athletic director worth their value will hang around for years to come with a limited salary. In other words, you get what you pay for. Also, we don't see NUSD cutting MSA or STEM, but why does sports continue to take a back seat? Another quote, as we anticipate the new safety guidelines and governance on how sports will be conducted in a COVID-19 landscape, it is also crucial for the athletic directors to begin preparing now for the unknowns. Reducing this role now would look like a giant oversight and misappropriation to the community, the students, the coaches, and the parents. As well, another quote, multiple private schools that I'll not name, they were named in the quote, but I won't say them, are heavily recruiting students right now away from public schools with NUSD being the primary target. Part of their pitch is the health of the athletic departments at NHS and San Marin in particular. Having our AD there for our students was a valuable addition for the school in general. Just a nice quote that sums it up. And these are just the comments from parents deeply involved, right? These are the parents who actually take the time to write to the district. What about all the kids? I would venture to say the majority of the kids that participate in sports that don't have parents like that aren't writing in, that aren't telling us how concerned they are. Many of these kids see sports as the main reason why they're in high school. And here we are, we're basically cutting back again. So that said, here's some of my immediate concerns about this proposal. This particular piece of the proposal around ADs, let me be clear. Enrollment, as many parents reliably note, neglecting our athletic programs will result in reduced ADA. We all know that. It's been happening forever. Just when we need it most, just when we start increasing our enrollment, we cut the ADs and then we see another slip. And we need every dollar ADA. Every student lost significantly reduces the impact of the dollars saved by making this cut. $132,000 represents our gross number. What's the net number after we lose enrollment? Do we really think this cut will have zero impact on ADA? I don't. So we need to consider the net impact of that cut. COVID compliance, a great unknown. We're going to cut our ADs just when COVID compliance complexity is about to hit them. Are we ready to do that? Are we going to give these ADs the support they need? How will we comply with the heightened requirements when we're reducing our staffing to this task by to this role by over 50%? COVID-driven chaos. You know, how will a part-time AD manage the very likely constant stream of changes in schedules, rules, procedures, after reducing our athletic director staffing by over 50%. So COVID is actually, we're looking at seeing a huge increase in the work this role is going to need to do coming up by July 20th when CIF announces what it's going to do. Just so you know, there is rumors out there that CIF is going to move spring sports into fall. Are we prepared to have a part-time AD handle the majority of our sports in the fall? And safety, of course. How will a part-time employee manage all the concussion testing and management protocols, i.e. follow up, make sure the kid doesn't practice when he wants to, but he has to be cleared, that were not in place when we last had part-time ADs. Those were not in place. And now we're going to do that with a part-time? I don't see it. And then last but not least, the athletic director's handbook. We just all saw that at the last meeting. And thanks to our full-time ADs, we finally have one. And we all hardly endorsed it and approved it less than a month ago. Have any of us actually read all the way through it? I'm trying to, I haven't yet, but it's great stuff. And I would ask all of us to read it and decide which tasks do we think we don't need them to perform. Because when they were doing this job and following that handbook, we all know they're working much more than 1.0. They're working probably at 1.2. And now we're going to cut it to 1.4. You need to think hard about what tasks in that handbook are no longer needed effectively. That's what we're saying. Or we simply say we plan to ignore those procedures and just view it as a waste of time. I'm sorry to be flippant, but that's where I'm at. So my ongoing question is this: why are athletes always a target in this district? Staff has recommended cutting it every year since we upped it to 1.0, as Trustee Nell noted. So much so that at the last time we did this, I believe myself and another trustee at least asked that we not see this anymore. It's time to let this position stay where it is. And yet everyone fully supports PE teachers, even when just 2 ADs support more than 1,400 students. Do the math. Our full-time ADs are a deal. So let's get real here. We all know that this is at least a 1.2 position. I mean, anybody thinks that these guys are working 7, 8 hours a day, doesn't know what's going on. And when it's done right, they do put in that time, at least probably 1.2, maybe more. And we just simply expect the AD to put in those extra hours. And in fact, back in 2016, the athletics task force that created these full-time ADs, the top 2 recommendations was full-time ADs, hooray, we did it. And we've been fighting for it every single year since then. But the number 2 recommendation, which never took place, never took hold, and I think we'll all remember this, was to have an admin support, a 1.0 supporting both high schools, half on each campus, so that the AD could be more on the field, in the court, whatever, working with the children, working with the students, and have an admin do all the paperwork. But that never happened. That's a large reason why our 1.0s are actually more like 1.2s. So our recent experience has clearly borne this out, with our ADs clearly working more than just 40 hours a week. And now we want to limit these tasks to just 40% of their day and have them teach 3 classes? Who can do that? Who would do that? I don't see us being able to fill these positions. I mean, in today's economy, maybe, but we're just going, it's like the definition of insanity. We're just trying to do it again, and it's not going to work. So this is a bad idea that will likely end up costing us more in lost ADA revenue than it even saves in compensation cost. So you can understand where I'm at. I really don't support this at all. I want to keep this at 1.0 on both campuses. And that I think there is pretty readily easy, not easy, nothing's easy, but there are ways we can find this $132,000, especially when it represents such a small percentage of the 2.5 that we're trying to save. Thank you.
Did somebody else? Oh, Trustee Gasson, thank you.
I'm hoping this motorcycle on my street goes away. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all I can hear is they love burning it up out here. So my first thing is I just hearing a lot from different trustees. I think one of the things that would be helpful at this point is, and maybe even going forward, is this list is great, even though there's some uncertainty about it. I think what is helpful is to have, like, what's the trade-off? Like, what are those things that we're not seeing, that when we're talking about these items that people have such a strong opinion on? What's the trade-off to if if we don't make that cut, what's on the other side of that? Then what are we looking at? The second thing that is abundantly clear in the conversation here, and I appreciate the clarification on how the ADs are funded, is that the reality, we don't have enough money from the parcel tax to cover these positions. And it is truly a shame that we were not able to get that passed, because then this conversation would not be happening right now. And that's why one of the things that bothers me the most is that money genuinely goes to people and places and things for our kids. Because if we're looking at this 0.4 that's being funded for athletic directors, I can't help but wonder, we talk about, athletics is always being cut. Well, if we suggested that the music department was being cut or that the librarians were going away, you're going to have a whole nother group of people that are upset about that. And and I'm not dismissing the importance of it at all. I'm just putting it out there that we're to the point that there are things that that we just can't continue funding in the same way. And so what are those things that we're willing to give up? It may not be the athletic director. One of the proposals that I actually had written out before Trustee Mack mentioned it was, maybe we split the difference, or we don't do 0.4, we do 0.6. And Yancey, I don't know, I can't see if he's still on here or not, but how much does that reduce from our cost savings? And then whatever that thing is that's hanging into the offsetting amount, the avoided layoffs, maybe there's some kind of trade-off there to make up for that, or I don't know, but fudging that just a little bit. I would not agree to 100% as much as I would like to, again, going with the idea that we've not been able to successfully increase that parcel tax that we truly need. And the other thing and last thing I would like to just ask about is sorry, my phone's going on. These vacant positions, why were they vacant? Is it just we couldn't find somebody to fill them? And are they genuinely, I know they're up to just not refill, but I don't know, what is an elementary prep person? And I know we did a lot of work around our grounds, and I think our properties are looking better. So is that something that just hasn't been filled for quite a while and that we can truly do without?
So, yeah, we have small teams. Our grounds team is a small team. Our crafts worker team is a small team. Our elementary prep teachers are a small team, but we have a contractual issue with the elementary prep. So what's happened with the elementary prep is, as the years have gone by and our enrollment has decreased, we haven't decreased our staffing in the prep schedule for our elementary schools. And so we've also taken on some burdensome processes that necessitate a bunch of travel, that also necessitate a mixing of cohorts at the 5th grade level of students. We can address all those problems and stay within our required prep ratios for teachers and students, and with one less teacher. And we do have a resignation in the elementary prep ranks. So we'll still provide the same service. All teachers will get their preps, all kids will get their music and PE without that one position. The crafts worker position is a true vacant position. We have not tried to fill it since we had I can't remember if it was a retirement or a resignation. The position was part of the hiring freeze, and we would continue to freeze that. And there will be an impact on our campuses. It's one less person from a small team. It makes a difference. Same thing with the crafts workers. This is a retirement that we have not filled because of the hiring freeze. And this will have an impact on our ability to complete work orders. And so it means that the priority, safety related work orders get done, and some of them that aren't quite as safety related, or it's just going to take longer. They're going to be on the list for longer. So all of these positions are important. All of them have an impact on the system.
All right, board members, I'm going to go to public comment. Give us a little bit of a breather, listen to the public comment, and then we'll come back to the board. So we'll turn it over to Ellen.
Yeah, Thank you.
And just a reminder, we're under 20 minutes though, is that correct? Yeah,
I think so. I
Okay.
think so.
all right, thank you.
Sure. The first one is from Sandy Vaughn, CSEA Chapter President, regarding the budget. Superintendent Koska and trustees, I am so grateful to all NUSD employees for their willingness to contribute to the 2021 Budget Stabilization Plan. Without their contributions, there will be many classified employee layoffs. I've been a part of the NUSD community for many years and have never before seen this kind of support for the classified staff. My heart is full. The next series are all about the athletic director. This is from Brian Greco, Budget Stabilization Plan, High School Athletic Director. As we anticipate the new safety guidelines and governance on how sports will be conducted in a COVID-19 landscape, it is also crucial for athletic directors to begin preparing now for the unknowns. The athletic director is now as critical as ever to the coming school year, planning and safety for our children. Reducing this role now would look like a giant oversight and misappropriation to the community, the students, coaches, and parents. Planning and implementing a multi-pronged strategic approach to ensure the health and safety of the student athletes, coaches, officials, and fans while they are on campus during this unprecedented time will be of the utmost importance. One of the most significant strategic prongs should include updating or developing campus operational procedures. The following is a list of areas where safeguard additions, including but not limited to social distancing and the use of face masks, must be taken into consideration when planning for the next sports season. Sportsmanship etiquette, practice safety protocols and waivers, weight room rules, athletic training room procedures, locker room management, study hall rules, team travel management, spectator seating. Also in consideration should be some type of daily clearance procedure before the student athlete can participate in sports activities. Lastly, and one of the most important prongs is to implement a COVID-19 educational awareness program, which includes but is not limited to student athlete and coach safety, hygiene training and procedures, health and safety venue signage, etc. How is this to be considered or implemented 2 to 3 hours a day? What qualified individual are you going to attract with a 0.4 offering? The district's proposal for athletic director cut will be perceived as irresponsible and could result in great public discord. I hope you consider the safety of our student athletes and the consequences of not having a full-time AD to support these efforts. The next one is from Ross Sargent. Full-time athletic directors are more essential than ever. NUSD trustees, as you work to assemble a budget during this challenging time, the San Marin All Sports Boosters organization reiterates its strongest support for the athletic director positions at both NUSD high schools. Keep in mind that the AD is second only to the principal in importance to a public high school, a realization often asserted by San Marin's principal. Our group exists to optimize educational experience for San Marin High School students. Accordingly, we consistently highlight the daily work of the athletic director in bolstering student learning in the classroom and the athletic arena. The AD does this by coordinating the myriad moving parts of athletic schedules, mentoring and supporting the dozens of coaches, and collaborating with AD counterparts doing the same at other schools. They do this to provide our students with a safe, efficient, and worthwhile developmental experience. That is to say, an educational experience, a leadership experience, college launching experience, a reason to stay in school experience, a mental and physical wellness experience, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. This is crucial work that would be fragmented and left to inundated administrators and teachers without a full-time AD. As NUSD trustees, you readily recognized this fact during the March 12, 2019 meeting when you decided to preserve both full-time AD positions, and then one of you stated on the record that you no longer wish to see the prospect of AD cuts brought before you. 15 months later, we are in a new world, one in which the role of the AD has only grown in importance to student learning and well-being. Students need athletics more than ever. Sheltering in place for months in a world swirling with uncertainty, our students thirst for a reliable institution that will bolster wellness through interpersonal and inter-community relationships. High school sports will return in some form soon, and before they do, there is a vast and unprecedented amount of work to be done. Governmental policymakers will likely authorize the return of school sports with many complex safety regulations. This situation will require the AD, actually the cohesive network of ADs, to implement these regulations as intended, with extensive planning, coordination, and tireless attention to detail. Yesterday, the AD facilitated the educational and athletic development of our students. Today's AD is mantled with the additional responsibility of keeping our students safe, healthy, and thriving in a tumultuous world. You were correct in preserving the AD positions last year, and you would be all the more correct in doing so now. Please continue to protect the crucial AD positions from budget cutting measures. Thank you, Ross Sargent, President, San Marin All Sports Boosters. This one is from Jim Hickey, the Athletic Director's position. Hello, I appeared in person and advocated for the AD position last time it was on the proposed budget cuts because I believe it is that important to the student athletes and both high schools' success. I am again advocating for this position to be saved. With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is even more vital that this position stay intact due to the full-time nature and ever-changing conditions that need someone committing all of their time to ensure that the sports programs and all athletes are represented. I have coached in our community for the past 23 years, and I have seen the impact and the ability of sports to keep kids engaged in school. I have witnessed many instances where sports have been the main reason that a student stayed in school and graduated. Please keep the AD position because I do not think it can be done as a collateral assignment that has been tried before and failed miserably. Thank you for your time. This is from Giselle Moshref, full-time AD for NHS and SMHS. I need full-time AD for Novato High during COVID-19. This is from Saluka Anand, Budget Stabilization Plan, High School Athletic Director. A full-time AD is vital to the success of the high school athletes, teams, and athletic staff in Novato. The detailed job description and extensive responsibilities far transcend a part-time position. The expertise, continuity, and oversight provided by a full-time AD are critical for effective supervision of athletic staff, athletic programs, development of athletes and diverse teams, and an overall rewarding and enriching experience for all. While we all recognize the financial burden imposed by the pandemic, reducing this position to a part-time position negatively impacts numerous staff members, athletes, and the high school community. Indeed, the entire high school athletic organization is at risk if the AD position is not full-time. Thank you for recognizing the importance of the AD role and maintaining a 100% time position. Okay, so the last one I have was actually submitted in its entirety by 6 different individuals. It was just a copy paste of the public comment. So I'm gonna read one of them, but I'll read you the names of everyone who submitted it. They are Renee Norman, Amy Brackett, Lisa Hobson, Michelle Helsing, and Kendra Chamberlain, and Jenny Fuel. And they're all the AD position. I think the one with the biggest font. Okay. Thank you, Board Trustees, for considering this public comment and your decision on the plan to cut the district's athletic director role by 60% at both NUSD high schools. As you know, NHS and SM have fought hard for many years to have a full-time administrative position representing the more than 1,400 student athletes and 94 teams on both campuses, respectively. The athletic director role has an intense responsibility that is even sometimes unattainable at a full-time allowance. By definition, some of these responsibilities include, but not limited to, leadership, evaluate coaching staff and facilitate coach evaluations, conduct seasonal goal-setting coach meetings, support coaching staff in their cultivation of relationships with players and parents, work with coaches and in support of athletes looking to compete at the college level, build positive working relationship with fellow athletic directors in MCAL, NCF, and CIF, define, lead, and execute the vision for athletics, administration of games, create schedules in collaboration with head coaches, oversee facility schedules for games and practices, oversee transportation arrangements, management of facilities, develop and manage athletic budget, purchase necessary equipment uniforms annually, oversee storage and maintenance of equipment and uniforms, work with NUSD to maintain all athletic facilities. School responsibilities, promote athletics throughout the school community, Marin County, and the Greater Bay Area. Promote the tenets of Positive Coaching Alliance. Maintain oversight of athletic databases, school website, rosters, etc. Parent relations, work with and advise boosters in support effort of athletic programs. Field and respond to all parental concerns brought to office. Public relations and program visibility. Maintain positive community relationships with Novato youth athletic organizations. Maintain and foster positive relationship with Marin IJ and other media outlets to highlight achievements of NUSD athletes and teams. Oversee maintenance of athletic website and social media. Maintain school awards. How can this all get done at 0.4 or 2 to 3 hours a day? The community plea. What we are trying to highlight here is how important this role is for these high schools, the more than 1,400 student athletes and the greater Novato community. The impact of this role is far greater than the 132,000 short-term cost savings. Please consider an alternate avenue for cost savings. Please do not devalue this position to less than half-time. This is a degradation of the role, a degradation of athletics in Novato, and a potential loss in student revenue year after year that could be devastating for the district in the long run. Thank you for your time, Novato community member. And that's that.
Okay, that concludes our public comment on this item. I know the board received many emails outside of public comment regarding this same item, athletic directors, and know that we've read, knowing this board, I always say this, we have read those, and if you did not receive a response, it wasn't because we ignored it, we did read them, and we always do. And I know I couldn't respond to everybody because they were coming in often, so thank you for sending those to us. All right, I bring it back to the board. Trustee Mack. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to be a good citizen here.
Sorry.
No, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the recommendations net of the athletic director line item, and that we look into alternatives for that 132,000 that's listed there.
All right, we have a motion by Trustee Mack. Do I have a second? Somebody's muted.
I'll second that because I'd like to get a response from staff regarding timing and how that.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to discussion now. We have a first and a second. Trustee Miller.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the motion. Is it all of the, you're proposing we move all of the items, not including the athletic director line item? That still doesn't get us the balanced budget that Yancey brought forward. So that doesn't meet our objectives. Are you thinking of a second motion tonight to get us to the balanced budget that Yancey needs? So maybe Yancey needs to clarify what the impact of your motion is, because it sounds to me like we're missing the mark that's been set for us.
I'll chime in before, and then let Yancey chime in too. So I am proposing that we approve everything net of the athletic director line item to get us to roughly, I'm going to guess 2.25, something like that, and ask that staff come back with an alternative for the $132,000, which represents, I'm going to, a very small percentage of the overall total. And also I point out that the total listed, and Yancey, this is where I want you to correct me, but my understanding is the total listed is about 2.3, and ultimately we do need about 2.5 to actually truly balance the budget, but we're going to be very close.
In terms of it's 2,377 without that 2,377,000. Without that, it would be 2,245,000, and it would leave us with a little under. Just calculate real quick. A little under 300,000 in terms of a budget deficit going into next year. I noted to trustee, I believe it was trustee Millerick earlier, that I do expect the hiring freeze and some of our expenditure controls to equate to at least another 100 to 150,000. So my recommendation would be to replace, is to make reductions in the total of almost 2.4 million. 2.377 is what we brought forward.
Thanks for the clarification. That makes sense. So, but to be clear, we're not necessarily achieving the full 2.5 tonight. We have more work to do.
So
My understanding is we have to achieve it by tonight, right?
So what I'm hearing from Assistant Superintendent Hawkins is that while we're not taking concrete action tonight that will get us to 2.5 million, it will get us to 2.377 million. And we have other processes that the board has put into place that will result in the other, $123,000. We just don't know exactly what that looks like, but it'll be through a tightening of positions as we get into the school year, and we can see what vacant positions are going to be needed moving forward and what vacant positions are not going to be needed moving forward. So that, I will admit that $123,000 is a little bit vague on how we accomplish that, but we're confident that we can. So this would create a hole of $132,000. And I think what you're asking is for the staff to bring back another recommendation for that $132,000. And, I will bring up, if you're interested in other options or other ways we can explore this AD position tonight, I could, make some other recommendations, but, I only want to do that if that's something the board's interested in hearing about.
I had trustee Gasson first, sorry.
That's fine.
I wouldn't.
Oh, you muted.
Sorry, I know, sorry. I wouldn't mind hearing, what's at the lower level that we're not seeing, but I'm wondering if is there any willingness from the other trustees to, instead of, trying to find a middle ground compromise to doing them at 0.6 instead of 0.4, and what that would mean to the budget? Like how much would that change, Yancy?
The difference there is about 44,000. It's about a third of the $132,000.
Okay.
Right,
and one other thing, none of this stuff is fun. I do have still a small concern about one of the crossing guard locations that we would be foregoing because of construction. So, I just want to be mindful of that when we're looking at that kind of thing. If a school site has a lot of construction things going on and it's an elementary school, that I don't think that's prudent to not have that safety there for those kids. So.
Trustee Millerick and then trustee Nell.
I will suffer through the crossing guard issue. There's 100 worst intersections that the county maintains, and given where we are, and I would live with what the county claims are the 100 worst, and I would ask them to reprioritize the ones we think are critical. So we have a process for there. I'm uncomfortable completely indemnifying the athletic program from these cuts. If we ended up at 0.8 or 0.6, but to say everybody takes a haircut except the ADs because they got a bunch of letters to the board, I voted to go up to 100% on athletic directors. I think it is an absolute necessity that we get back to 100% because the program is significantly better. But we have to make some progress towards changing how efficiently we run systems. And to exempt them 100% just seems out of line to me. So if we could put it at 0.8% or 0.6%, or I think they go by, it's a classroom teacher, which the most important thing we did is we made it a classroom teacher with an assignment of athletic director, which historically it was a walk-on coach doing with no training about how to teach kids or run education programs or do the administrative stuff. So I absolutely agree it's got to be a classroom teacher. So I think that's either 0.4, 0.6, or 0.8 based on the way we assign duties. So I would do 0.6 or 0.8. And then I would support this and ask the staff to find the difference. But 100% just sounds like we just give them a pass and they don't have to participate in solving the problem. And I
Ross,
think that's completely the wrong message.
Ross, how
Hold on,
about
let's see,
this?
Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, he's done. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be stepping on you there, Ross. How about this? I mean, this is still in the same spirit of what I just proposed. I'm saying, basically approve this net of that line item, and then we come back with an approach to how to attack that $132,000. And Ross, what you just mentioned, those 0.6, 0.8, that can be part of the discussion along with other ideas. That's what I'm proposing, that we revisit that 132,000 with options. And I'm not trying to say that athletics are immune to cuts. In fact, I believe vast majority of the people you heard from tonight were already there. It's just that when they heard the budget is back to where it was, that's when they got motivated. That's when we saw them sending things in.
And their voice needs to be heard. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So here, let me do it this way. I'm going to make a motion to, I'm going to make an amendment to your motion, and then we can vote on that. And my amendment to your motion is to move the athletic directors to 0.8, and let's see if it gets a second and make it be part of this, and then we'll see.
So we have a motion on the, or an amendment to the motion
How
to
does that
move.
work? That he has to get a second, and then I say yes or no, or
Yep,
just,
that's right. Yeah.
okay,
Second that.
Okay, so now we have the item to talk about. So
okay.
now we can vote on that, and it either gets included or not, and then we'll have a decision.
So the amendment is to move to a 0.8 instead of, okay,
Instead of exempting them from the conversation.
instead of exempting it completely. Okay.
So, and I'm not clear how the rules work. Am I supposed to say yay or nay and that's it?
Do you, yes, do you support that amendment?
That's
Let me-
one way, is that, or if I got a second, then we vote on the amendment, and then it either fails or succeeds.
I think that's correct.
Anyway,
You could call the question on the amendment because we've got a second.
Yeah.
But unless anyone has any more comments on it, I've been sort of waiting my turn.
Go ahead, Derek.
That's fine. You can go.
On the original motion, can I have a comment then? Before
Yes, you may. Yes, yes.
question on the suggestion. Look, I think it's important that, first of all, we're not going to have any sacred cows, and we're not going to make any department immune, and that certainly isn't the goal, I think, of anyone on board. I think what we're talking about are priorities, and obviously we have different opinions of what goes ahead of what. But here's where I think the superintendent came back and said, is the board interested in ideas? And I am, and because my position is there is a ton of serious work that needs to be done that, if it isn't done correctly, can have serious consequences on the lives and families of the people we are intended to be serving. And what I want is to be sure that it's resourced enough so that we are not going to experience, some of the horrible things that were going on prior to having responsibility in this area. So I wanted to hear more from the superintendent on if he's got some ideas about how this workload can be handled. And I'll end by saying, these are my words, but I did hear both of our ADs while they were resigning bring up the fact that the job is, even at full time and a half, that is very demanding on their nights and weekends, and the amount of work that they put into it. It's that much work for people who love what they do. I think we need to be more serious about the responsibility here, and we can't treat it like a 0.4, a 0.8, a point whatever. We have to treat it like, what are the consequences for not running this program right, and run it all with classified, run it all with some other, let's spitball, but we've got to make sure that these programs are run correctly and without exposure to the kinds of liability that we have seen. My comment, and now call the question if you would like.
Okay. I want to turn to Superintendent Casca. Do you have any thoughts on this amendment that's being proposed to 0.8? Is that doable? Is that, I know that's not an easy question.
No, look, this is a question there's no answer to. There's no correct answer to. I mean, one of the options we could do is we could not make this decision, and you could charge staff with looking at our comparable districts and seeing how they're staffing their athletic director positions. That would be a scientific way to make this decision. We could do anything we want. We could pick any percentage we want to staff our ADs at. We could put them at 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. We could put them at 1.0. We could talk to NFT about having them be at 1.0, but not paying the additional stipend. We would have to negotiate that because the stipend's included in the contract. We could reduce the position to part-time. We could hire some clerical support to be able to help the person in the position. Obviously, most of those ideas reduce the savings to the program. You know, you've charged staff with coming up with a balanced budget. That would mean us going back to the drawing board and bringing something else forward to you that the community says, oh my gosh, we can't cut that. That's the most important thing in the district. Because the ideas that we have left are the most important thing in the district to somebody. And they will come to us and they will say, like with air conditioning, or with, you know, you can list the things that we've heard the community come and talk to us about over the course of this year. Whatever, it could be libraries. We're out of easy things to cut. We can bring you some. We can certainly bring you something, and we will if that's what you ask us to do, and we'll do it with a smile, and we'll have the discussion, and we'll hear from the community. And a decision will get made, and we'll have a balanced budget or we won't. So again, we can pick whatever allocation we want for staffing as long as it's 0.4 or more. We could put a pause on this decision and ask us to go and do some research on our comparable districts. We have, the world is our oyster.
Okay, so
I believe that's similar to Trustee Mack's idea. I think we should study this because we're already there. I mean, Superintendent Casca said that, you know, the next thing is going to be the big thing that everyone's going to say, no, you can't cut that. We're there tonight with this position, as far as I'm concerned. So since we're already there, let's get better at solving these problems. And I'm not saying you guys didn't work hard and you guys haven't really tried to make the best decisions, but I really would like to take the superintendent up on his suggestion and not only compare what others are doing, but maybe there is a combination of ways that we can handle the workload, because it goes back to President Butler's question. I mean, what assurances that we have that the work is going to get done with this level of FTE? So, Madam President, I suggest we call the question on Trustee Millrick's amendment, and then I would like to propose an amendment to Trustee Mack's, that we take up the superintendent, that he bring this back with some other difficult decisions on how to solve the problem.
okay, my one concern is coming back with suggestions is eliminating somebody else's job. I have a feeling somebody who has a current position. So that's the way I'm looking at it right now. Potentially, unless they can be creative in a way that we can solve that solution. But you know, there's no teacher layoffs. We have restrictions on classified with the COVID. We need to get our house in order financially, our district in order financially. And if we're finding this decision to be difficult, the next coming decisions we have to make going forward are going to be extremely difficult. And if we're struggling with this, just be prepared. And our community needs to be prepared. We are going to come back with those things that are going to be very hurtful to sites and to our students, unfortunately. These are the decisions we do not like to make. And staff has worked really hard to come forward with these recommendations. Totally agree with with Trustee Mack and Trustee Nell and how important ADs are. Totally understand that. But I'm reading districts eliminating sports right now, or eliminating ADs all completely. And here we are, we're able to at least have a 0.4. My worry is to come back with options is, again, eliminating someone's position who currently thinks they have a job in our district. And now we're gonna go get rid of them to save to get a full-time AD. So I have some reservations about this a little bit. I could potentially agree to doing the 0.8. If we can get to a 0.8, I don't know how that works with their 0.2 portion of it, or do we hire somebody outside to do a 0.8? How are you gonna find that, how do you find that person?
I have one other wacky idea that might help. I heard somebody say, let's spitball some crazy ideas. I got a crazy idea. On July 20th, the California Interscholastic Federation is gonna let us know what sports are gonna look like next year.
That's, yeah.
And
Right.
what they might say is we aren't going to have fall sports,
Right.
and we
Right.
aren't going to have winter sports,
Yep.
and we aren't going to have spring sports.
Mhm.
Right.
And so
Understood.
so one option that we could consider, and I don't know if this is a good option or a bad option, is that the other concern I have is that if we don't hire, if you ask me to bring information back to you, this is our last regular board meeting of the year. Our next board meeting is in August. It's a little late in the day to be hiring ADs, whether it's 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, or 1.0. You know, an option could be for us to hire, and I know our principals don't love this, but to hire a 1.0 FTE athletic director now to oversee both schools until we hear what the announcement looks like from CIF on July 20th. The challenge is that puts us at ADs at both schools at 1.0. And we're hiring one of them really late. So I'm spitballing, I'm throwing out I'm trying to get you to all the crazy ideas to help us get there. But we also have to remember that you know, as a district, we spend, Yancey, how much money do we spend on athletic coaches and athletic directors roughly?
About $1 million a year.
So, you know, how much are those seasons going to exist? You know, how much money do we contribute to something that may not exist right now? How does that July 20th decision come into play? That we all want sports. We all want to have football starting in September and basketball and, you know, all the sports through the year. But, you know, given our financial situation, can we speculate that those programs are going to be running on time? I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are interesting ideas. Like them.
We have so many unknowns right now. That's the trouble. And we
Mhm.
don't have the answers to any of that information.
Well, so if I could
Okay.
go back to my motion, I mean, I'm still unclear whether I have the final say in whether my motion gets adjusted or not. We have to.
We have an amendment to the motion and we had a second. We have Trustee Millick and Trustee Cooper, first and a second on amending your motion to move to a 0.8.
Yeah.
At AD.
Yeah, so I think we have to vote on the amendment because it was seconded, I think.
Right.
And then that's how I think the Robert's rules call for us to proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, so I'm
I'll
That's
loan
the
you my
case,
5
Dr.
books,
Batts.
Debbie.
Let me just speak to my take on that, and then
okay.
This is my motion.
Your original motion, yes.
I agree with the concept of proposing that at some point. I don't want to do it now. I want to first make that in the mix of all the various ideas. I don't want to reject it out of hand, but I don't want to add it to this amendment. I want to first get the AD line item out of this mix and then have us on the record vote exactly what we want to do. And also, because Chris just came up with some great ideas that could actually be even cheaper than 0.8, and that could be much more prudent in our situation with the unknown going on regarding CIF and July 20th and all those sort of things. And the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, we already have one candidate that's kind of in the wings, ready to go to do exactly what Chris talked about. And then we can talk to the idea after July 20th of what we should do. So I think with all those various ideas floating around, it's important to me to keep the motion as it is, and then for us to step separately directly into the AD situation and talk about ideas for that.
Okay.
I would just agree that, you know, all of us know a little bit about Robert Rules of Order, some more than others, but none of us are super expert.
No.
I think that Greg's idea keeps it just simplifies things.
Mhm.
We take everything except the AD, we vote on that, we see where people are, then we come back to the AD and we just handle that part separately. It's clean, it's easy.
Right.
We might know more.
I would be happy to withdraw the motion if the second agrees. If we
Right.
make a commitment to do what Chris is proposing, which basically puts the work back in staff's lap, which I appreciate Chris is standing up to do. But it is a bunch of work. And
well, just Ross, I'm sorry, I may not have been clear. What I'm proposing right now is simply that for the point of your voting on these important topics, we just take Greg's motion, original motion, which is everything except for ADs, and we vote on that. And then right now we have a discussion about ADs, and you guys give us direction for where you want to go with that, or if you want to make a motion about ADs and second it and vote on that.
Right. So Debbie, since you're the chair of this meeting, to be clear, Greg's original motion is we consider everything but ADs, and we're not exempting ADs from a conversation. We're going to have a conversation about ADs immediately.
Right.
The motion isn't preserve ADs. The motion is vote on everything and not vote one way or another on ADs. And we're now going to have that conversation.
Yes.
Then with that, I would propose removing my.
You withdraw your motion.
If the second will agree.
Okay. Trustee Cooper, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So that motion is withdrawn, that Trustee Miller first and Trustee Cooper seconded. Okay. So now we'll move to Trustee Mack's motion, which is voting on all the items, excluding the ADs. And can you just make an amendment? Let's make an amendment, Trustee Mack, if you're okay with it, to just say, and then continue the conversation of how to move forward with ADs. I think we need to include that in the motion.
Sure, to pursue, right. To explicitly consider the AD line item separately on the record for all.
Okay.
Okay, that works. Trustee Nell, do you
approve?
You approve? Okay.
I will go along with that.
So I'll call the motion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 7-0. So let me first, we approved everything that staff brought forward, excluding the ADs. Now we'll have a conversation, but let's first thank our labor partners for coming forward, coming to the table. And we've made these concessions are across all areas, and I really appreciate that. I know this board appreciates that. Not one particular area is taking a hard hit, and that's how we need to do this work. We need to do it collectively, and we have to work together. My big thing is working against each other and not getting to where we need to be does not work. So this is everybody coming to the table. I know we still have work to do. There's negotiations and working through all that, but I know this board appreciates everybody being a part of the solution. All right, so let's have a conversation with ADs. And Superintendent Koska had some options. We have this CIF will be putting out some decisions. I think that's a big one there, if even sports is going to continue at all. And that's on the 20th, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. July 20th. Okay.
Trustee Aguila?
Yeah, so I have a question about that. I think I know the answer, but I wanted to just ask it and let it be known. So we talked about the July 20th. So would it be possible to talk about the athletic directors after the July 20th?
It would be possible. Our first meeting is the first Tuesday in August. I'm not sure if that's the 3rd or the 4th. It's something like that. And it would be very late to hire for those positions. It's possible, but it would be you know, it would represent some challenges. Plus, there wouldn't be an AD overseeing any of the summer work. To be clear, we have Jim Larson, Greg Pfister is covering that work at Novato High School, and Mike Casper is covering that work at San Marin High School over the summer.
Okay, I wanted to ask because it wasn't, we talked about it, but it wasn't really mentioned, so.
Yeah, it's a good
I wanted
question.
to be on the record. Thank you.
Yep.
Trustee Mack.
I think that's maybe going a little further down that path, Chris. If possible, and if not, maybe someone else, can you articulate some of the tasks that need to be undertaken between now and July 20th? If we had an athletic director or athletic directors in place, some of the things that we need to get going on sooner rather than later.
So currently, Greg and Mike are overseeing the summer training programs and supporting coaches with whatever they need in that regard, working with the athletic trainers. So they're providing that support currently.
Okay, but like scheduling, you know.
Well, it's hard to. I mean, we don't know what scheduling looks like right now. Scheduling what? You know, so these are people that both have experience with this work. They've been overseeing this work for a long time. Greg Pfister was an AD for a long time at one of our biggest charter high schools with the most athletic success at Clayton Valley High School. So these are people with depth of experience in this work, and they're overseeing it right now. I'm sure they're also calling Dennis and Michelle and saying, "Hey, what am I supposed to be doing?"
Yeah, they have full-time day jobs already.
Okay, so Superintendent Koski, you had some ideas that you kind of just
Yeah,
out
so
there.
I can swing. You want me to swing through those one more time? Just
Or
a
I
little
mean,
more
at
slowly?
this point, I think this is obviously gonna have to come back, I think.
Mhm. Okay.
With some sort of solutions, some sort of options, I guess, not solutions,
Okay.
but what are
Yeah.
some creative options is I think is
Okay.
where we're at.
Do you want me to conduct some data analysis of our comparable districts and see what their staffing looks like? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Probably I don't think it's important, but
Yeah, I'm saying sure just because it's, but
I'm saying yes, because we do everything driven by data. Just
that's a good idea. It's a good idea.
rule as every other position.
Yeah, comparables. We do comparables.
Yeah, we
Yep.
do.
We have a set of agreed to comparable districts.
okay.
Okay.
Um,
So we will bring back some. Here's I want to make sure I understand staff's commitment to this.
Mhm.
And then I want to be clear on what the timeline is for when you
Yes.
want this information. So we will bring back, what the savings are if we set the bar at different points, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. We will bring back some information about comparable districts. Outside of that, I'm not sure what else.
If you bounce it off the bargaining unit,
The bargaining unit has said that they want this position reduced to 0.4. That is their standing right now on this position. NFT is, NFT doesn't want to reduce their positions, but if NFT is gonna see reductions, this is the priority position for them to have reduced, in part because it's vacant. So, but
okay.
Yeah.
Trustee Gasson and Trustee Miller.
My only I do want to hear what other school districts are doing or have. My only reservation about that is that we're going to be in a realm where we may not be what every other school district is doing. And I say that with the idea that, I don't know what those secondary positions are that we don't know what they are right now. But if it's a music person or it's an art person or a librarian, library clerk, we start falling into this thing where we just, there's going to be positions that we're going to have to do something about, and it may not be the same at all other schools. And I don't know if I'm articulating that well enough, but I guess it's always good to see what other schools are doing, but I'm not sure, with that shortfall that we can always just keep up to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a good point of reference, but I don't want to use that as,
Well,
I don't
let's
wanna
just
see-
use it as a data point.
Informational.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's a data point. I agree.
Okay, I mean, I did, but if you see where I'm kind of going with that, I mean, because if we start saying we've only got one music teacher and some other district has 3, well, you know, we can't, I don't know. I think we're just going to be facing some really difficult situations, and it's not going to always match up to what everybody
Right.
else is doing.
Agreed. with that.
Trustee Millerick?
I got a couple of points. The idea here is we're matching supply to demand. We have 2 problems. We don't know what the demand is because there may be no sports programs at all. No, MCAL may decide that they're just going to cancel fall or spring or whatever. So Chris is going to find out a month from now if there is demand for an athletic program. And I would imagine no matter what, it's going to be a smaller program than we experienced this last year. Because, I mean, you put a team on a bus and send them to Ukiah to play a game when you got a coronavirus floating around? I suspect not, and you can't Zoom a football game.
Nope.
There's
One tennis match.
or a tennis match, or, you know,
Ball game.
I mean, so clearly the problem we're trying to solve, we don't even actually understand very well. On the other side of that same coin is we're not at a neutral position right now. We have 0 athletic directors. The 2 that we had that were brilliant and have done such a great job quit. Not, you know, and partly because
Overworked.
they have a lot, they have kids and families, and, you know, and they all want to go to Salt Point Lodge and they can't because they're too busy working. So here we are with 0 supply, and the only supply Chris has mentioned is a couple of fill-ins who know the job really well, but somebody mentioned they have day jobs. So we have no supply, but we also have no demand right now. So we're in a guessing game going forward. So are we going to have higher to the 1.0 position, which we currently have on the books, or are we going to treat this like every other vacancy and leave it open until we have a plan, which is, it seems to me like what we have to do. Leave it open until we have a plan, and we need a plan as soon as possible. So I think this is a position in turmoil, and I hope, and I'm thankful Chris and the leadership of the district is going to spend a bunch of time figuring out what's a good solution. But I'll bet you we can't come up with a permanent solution in the next 90 days. I'll bet you we have to live with an interim solution. Not that we like it, but we have to live with an interim solution because things are changing too fast, and to commit to a whole year salary for a program that we don't know is going to run a whole year is going to be a problem. So I think we just got to let Chris run with this a little bit and get us 60 days down the road and see where we are. And it's not going to be a perfect year. I mean, I think that's the net of it. It's just not going to be a perfect year. No matter what we did right now, it wouldn't be perfect because we just don't know. So,
And I think that's part of why I'm in support of the recommendation, because we just don't know what is, so to at least have a 0.4 is better than not having an AD at all. We could have just left the position vacant and not filled it completely. And that would not, and I understand that that's a tough one. That's a huge loss to our district. So I have a feeling potentially coming back and just leaving it at the 0.4 just to have it, but let's see what staff can come up with.
And when do you want me to bring that to you?
I want you to perfectly predict the future.
Yeah, right.
No, but seriously, I need to know when.
The sooner, I mean, I would do a special meeting just for this.
So is this a July 14 thing or an August 3 thing?
If you can do it on July 14th, I say we add it to that.
Yeah.
With July 20s when he gets the other dates, I
Yeah,
think we
it seems
live
like
with August.
NIF's announcement might be important.
I think we have to live with August.
But if I can chime in for a second, just a couple things. One thing, it's interesting, you know, here we work all these media tools going on. My text just blew up when people were saying that both campuses are pretty much being handled. In fact, I'm hearing that team moms are doing all the paperwork. So we have a lot of paperwork going through, and it's not normal. It's extreme paperwork because of COVID. All kinds of disclaimers, liability forms. I mean, it's bad, and it's being pushed onto the parents. So
Well,
just
I hear
heads
the same
up,
thing about every teacher in every classroom that we're
Yep,
doing less
it's
than
more
we
the
did
same.
before.
It's more of the same, right?
Yeah, but
And so just a heads up on that.
So do me a favor, Greg, if you could follow up with an email to me about that so that I can
I will.
address it with the appropriate principal, I'd be happy to do that. Because I've been crystal clear with our team about what this should be
Okay.
looking like.
I appreciate that. But also too, we've kind of just glossed over Chris's idea of potentially bringing in one for now and then figuring out what we're going to do on the 20th. So I don't want to ignore that. So I'm
So hiring a full-time,
district-wide.
a district-wide AD.
If Chris wants to give him a month or two long contract to have him cover it in the interim, that'd be great, but.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know that
I
I'd
don't
rather
wanna
have the
commit to a
full
year-long,
picture in front of me.
maybe.
that's possible.
Chris,
Okay,
ask Chris.
I'll
Let's
look.
wait for the facts from
Okay.
Chris.
yeah. Trustee Gasson?
So I will confess to this not being an element that I'm familiar with, but you kind of touched on what I was thinking is if we hire this person and then there's not, I mean, are there other things that the person can then do if there's no sports in the fall?
They would be an add-on. There would be stuff that we could have them do, but they would be an add-on to the budget.
But right now, we're in the position we need to make cuts. We're not
Yeah.
talking about adding on.
Yeah, I'm just,
So,
No,
okay,
I know.
so let's think, I know the 14th is not ideal, but for right now, let's work with the 14th.
I agree.
Let's have staff collect some information, some data, some solutions. I will work with Chris in agenda planning and with Yancy and Chris, and we'll try to find some next steps going forward. And if it calls for a special meeting outside the 14th, that's what we do.
Can we find what the trade-off is on there as part of that?
that
Right.
would be, so what we would bring to you, we would say if it's 0.4, then we're done. If it's 0.6, then we have $44,000 more to go, and this is what that $44,000 would look like. If it's 0.8, we have $88,000 more to go, and that's what the $88,000 would
Right.
look like.
Okay, so with where you expect to make the cuts to trade off for that?
What I'm learning from this meeting is that you need a menu. So I will give you a menu, and
Okay,
I will let you choose from the menu.
okay, that's helpful. I mean,
Yeah.
because I do think that when we start looking at that, then that's when you start, to President Butler's earlier point, is you start realizing what that other person is that you're trading
Right.
for. And
Right.
I think that that's important to know right now. So, and my
Right on.
final question, just, I know the 20th is the date, and completely with the disclaimer, everything is just uncertain and everything is different, but is the expectation with that date, whatever that decision is, that they're not going to change it in 60 days from, no, I see Ross's head. I can barely see your head, but I can see it going no.
No.
Okay, because my concern at this point is that if we're waiting for that date, they say, no, we don't have anybody, but then, I mean, I don't feel like the way that we're handling this situation, things are going to get any better. I wish I was more optimistic. So,
In 2009, there were mid-year budget cuts from the state.
Yeah.
We are on
Right.
quicksand on this whole thing.
Yancy, sorry.
I just wanted to note that CIF meeting on July 20th is crucially important, but CIF doesn't supersede Department of Health guidelines in
That's a good
Marin
point.
County.
Yeah.
So while I'm not saying that I believe that they will be more or less than that, I just want to note that we are waiting for the Department of Health. They have been working with organizations recently, so we're hopeful. But any of CIF guidelines would also have to be approved by our local Department of Health and Dr. Willis's office. But I would be hopeful that the CIF is working with statewide Department of Health, and so there would only be, if any, minor differences.
Okay, thank you for making that point. I agree with that. Okay, so staff, Chris and Yancy, are you in a position where we can move forward with the next item, or?
Yeah, so.
You need some more clarity.
No, well, yes and no. I mean, I know what I think you want from us. It sounds like you want it by the 14th, knowing that we won't have guidance from CIF at that point. Would you prefer that we wait until after the 20th? Is really the bit of information I need from you.
I would
think
go.
that kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not to rush it. And I would
Mhm.
say unless the superintendent comes up with more information that makes the 14 viable,
Right.
we could wait.
Thank
Okay.
you, trustee.
So does
Now,
that mean we're waiting until August 3rd, or does that mean that you
Special
and
meeting.
Debbie and I will touch base in between and see if we feel like it's worth calling a special board meeting to
Yes.
discuss this particular topic?
Special meeting.
You and Debbie can figure this out.
oh, great. I just figured it out.
Point 4. No, just kidding. Okay, so we will
Okay.
work on this. I
Yeah.
will work with staff to gather the information, and Debbie and I will work on the right time to share it with the board.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
right, so we'll conclude this item. And
So just to be clear, Debbie, we passed most of the budget reductions, save this one
Correct.
item, which is still in conversation.
right, and I.
So, and is Yancy, did you get what you needed out of this meeting, Yancy?
No, we didn't get a balanced budget.
Well,
It wasn't balanced to begin with.
I want to thank the board, and especially all of our partners who have really come to the table to work together. And we still have got lots of work to do. And we'll get to that balanced budget, but I want to thank the board and our partners for really coming together as a community here. And I really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Well,
Great, thank you.
Yancy.
Thank you, Yancy.
thank you, sir.
All right, so this concludes this item. Moving on to item 12B. This is approval of revised education services related board policy as a second reading.
Has Jennifer been hiding there the whole time? I just missed.
Sure have.
5131.6 and the AR that goes along with that.
Good evening, everyone. Great to see all of you. Thank you for having us tonight. We have 2 BPs for you this evening. The first is actually a second reading of Board Policy and Administrative Regulation 5131.6, Alcohol and Other Drugs. This came to you as a first reading last week and passed the first reading with no recommendations for edits. And so I'm simply bringing it back for a second reading and a final approval from the board.
All right, thank you for that. Now I noticed that there's an exhibit that goes along with this board policy. I want to know if that still applies.
Yeah,
It's
the
related to
exhibit is-
breathalyzer.
It's specific to the breathalyzer. We took a look at that, talked to both of our high school administrative teams, and there are times when they still use and want to have access to the breathalyzer. So we decided to keep the breathalyzer exhibit in place.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right, board members, this is a second reading. Were there any comments or?
I'm going to ask my usual question. If there aren't no public comments coming forward on this policy, I will move adoption.
I'll second.
So we have a first by trustee Nell, a second by trustee Mack. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, 7-0. Thank you.
And-
Moving on to item 12C. This is first reading of 6145 board policy.
Yes, so this is just for policy 6145, which speaks to extracurricular and co-curricular activities. This board policy actually has not been updated since 2009. So the primary changes that you've noticed with that are to just get it up to date with all of the CSBA recommendations. The second is to align it with the changes that have been made on our governing boards for athletics. Our board policy has been so outdated that there's a number of policies that have changed within CIF, MCAL, and NCS, excuse me. And so we wanted to make sure that this was in alignment with all of our governing athletic boards and with our CSBA recommendations. The only change in language that we have recommended that is specific to NUSD is the addition of a temporary probationary status for the first semester of all freshman students. We currently don't offer a probation period for our freshmen, our ninth grade students, which has become very problematic. Our athletic directors have spoken this in the past. We have so many students who come to us from different areas of California, but also from private schools that use grading practices that are not aligned with our same grading practices. It often delays their ability to participate in athletics as a freshman in the fall sports. The addition of this would allow for all freshmen to be eligible as they enter into our high schools. And if they do need to use that as a probationary status, because we find out that their 8th grade or early 9th grade grades were not, did not satisfy, they would maintain that probationary status for that semester, but they would still have one more left the remainder of high school. As of today, we have always granted no more than 2 non-consecutive probationary periods during the time span that they are in high school. That would remain the same. It would just now allow access for our 9th grade students. If the students did not end up meeting that probationary status, they would still have their 2 left for the remainder of their high school year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything that you may have seen in our new policy.
I have a clarification, if you could help me. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4th page under attendance. It states the students on B, students are required to be in attendance for a minimum of 50% of the day. And we're taking away the four periods. Is there a particular reason for that change?
Well, this is actually twofold. The language of 50% is actually in alignment with the other recommendations, but specifically right now, because we don't know what our school day is going to look like. Right now, when we look at our high school schedule, looking at going back, they're going to school 4 periods a day would mean they cannot be absent from any one period because they will only be attending 4 periods in a day. Unlike what they've done in the past, which is 7 periods to 8 periods a day, which is half of their day. Because the 50% is more in alignment with CIF and CSBA recommendations, and it is more in alignment with what our schedules are going to look like next year, this was a good time for us to make that shift.
Okay, that helps me, because I was like, oh, anybody could say, oh, that's 50%, all right, bye.
Yeah.
You know, and not have to complete a full,
Yeah.
you know,
In
4
the past,
periods. I kind of liked the definite 4 periods. To me, it was more defined. Trustee Gasson?
So that actually brought up a point that I hadn't thought about until you just said that. With our changing school year and all this stuff, are we going to have any issues with other policies, or is this one, maybe I'll stick with this one, is this something that we would change after the pandemic is over and we've settled down? Or I guess it just opened dialogue on, you know, if this wasn't in alignment with what we're proposing going forward, are there other policies that we're going to have to review, or is there like a reprieve on that temporarily?
At this point, what we're recommending is that we would stay with the language of 50% of the day, knowing that this is the recommendation of and what most schools have in their board policy. If it was something the board wanted to reconsider, we certainly have, you have the decision-making power to put that back into a period based measurement. Whether you want to do that now and stick with a number of periods that the students had to be in school, or we could wait and have this be revised after the pandemic and see what school looks like when we go back post COVID-19.
Okay. I mean, I don't have any reason, or it just put a whole new perspective on the policies and things and how they might be in conflict with some of the stuff that we've got going on right now for the hopefully the short term.
There are a number of policies that may need to be updated. They wouldn't necessarily require a policy change, but they would need a practice or a protocol update that is temporary. One of those that I know I'll be bringing to you in a board Friday update is around what we had in the athletic director's report about how we're going to be re-entering in the fall. And what we're going to be using for GPAs when we're talking about credit versus no credit. So that wouldn't necessarily need to be a policy change, but it'll certainly need to be a consideration that we make temporarily between now and the end of the school year. So we could handle many other policies in that way as well.
Okay. All
So-
right, any other questions? I'm fine with what's being presented myself. I just needed that clarity. So,
I'm prepared to move the recommendation. I think this is a good idea, and I think we're going to have better results with our young people as a result of it. So
Thank you.
good work.
I second.
okay. So we have a first by trustee Nell, a second by trustee Aguila. This is approval of revision of the first reading. This will come back for a second reading just to give it some more time. I would say you could probably put it under consent if we don't get any feedback from the community. We feel comfortable and we didn't have any concerns here, any changes, so it could come back on consent. But we do want to give it another round just to make sure that we didn't miss anybody's comments or concerns. So this is the first reading of 6145 extracurricular and co-curricular activities. All those in favor? 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Have a
Jen.
great evening.
And thanks for waiting
Seeing you
around.
All right, this is moving on to item 12D. This is approval of amendment to an extension of a district superintendent employment agreement. This, I will speak to this, obviously my name's on it. Every year the board conducts an evaluation of the superintendent. It's one of the important roles that we do. We hire the superintendent, we evaluate the superintendent, and if necessary, we would terminate the superintendent. So we take this very seriously as our board, and I know since I've served on this, that does happen. We put time into the evaluation and make sure that it's properly conducted with the superintendent. And so this is coming forward. The board has offered to extend the superintendent's contract a 1 year. The most a contract can be is 4 years. So he has completed his first year. Superintendent Koska has completed his first year of his contract. And in the language of his contract, it states that the board may offer an extension if he receives a satisfactory or above evaluation, which he has received that, and we did report that out from closed session. So this is before the board to approve this amendment. Any questions for me?
This is an extension, correct? This is the board offering a 1-year extension to the superintendent? Is that
Yes.
a correct statement?
That's correct. And his contract would then expire in June 30th, 2024.
Okay. I will
Be approved. Oh, go ahead.
okay, I'll move approval.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
second.
Comment.
Yep. Hold on. Trustee Millerick and Trustee Mack.
Do I get to have a comment?
Trustee Gasson had raised her hand, so I want to make sure I get to her.
Or if Ross wants to go first, well, no, maybe I will go first. So I just wanted to say I was going to be voting against the extension, but I want to be clear that it has nothing to do with Superintendent Koska's performance or any lack of support for his continuing forward. I just not used to having a term that expires so much into the future, and I think there's still 3 years on it. So I just don't see the need to do that at this time. So.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Gasson, for expressing your concern there. Trustee Millerick and then Trustee Cooper.
So I made the motion and I will be voting for it. State law has provides that a superintendent's contract that the payout on a contract that's canceled is maximum of 18 months and not the 4 years. And so extending the contract represents a statement of faith for the board in voting for the superintendent. So it doesn't create a financial liability, which is, I think, the basis of your concern, Diane. And state law protects the community and the board so that there's a specific 18-month window. And Yancey could confirm the actual period, but I think it's 18 months in state law.
It's
So-
12 months,
12.
actually, Ross.
Is it 12?
It's 12,
It,
yeah.
it used to be 18, it's now 12.
It
so-
changed about, 5 years ago, maybe. I
Okay,
don't
so,
know.
well, there you go. I haven't been paying attention for 5 years. So, so we're protected financially, and I want to make a statement that I support the superintendent's commitment to the district and the community. So that's why I've made the motion, and I will be voting in favor of this item.
Okay.
And I understand your concerns, Diane, but I think
I'm sorry, who did I have? Trustee Cooper?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say I'm happy to support this, and I'd like to definitely put on the record that I'm grateful to Chris, your work in this district and your leadership. It's gonna be a rough year coming up in the next year after that, but I'm happy to have you at the helm of this district.
Good. I'm happy to be here.
Trustee Aguila and then trustee Now.
So I just wanted to thank Superintendent for the hard work that he did this whole year, and it was an honor to be able to go through this process. And it was a really tough year. I agree. It's gonna be another tough year coming up, and I just well, one of the reasons why I'm approving this is because besides the evaluation is that commitment's the word. So I wanted to just thank you for your commitment to NUSD and our community. So.
Trustee Now.
Yeah, I just wanted an opportunity to acknowledge the superintendent's performance in his first year. I think it's been an extraordinary year with all sorts of surprises and things to deal with, and I'm have full confidence in his abilities, and I'm going to support the extension because I believe it adds to the continuity and will to the success of the district. There are technicalities in labor law around these things, so we have to state his performance as satisfactory officially, but I think it's in this particular trustee's eyes, I think it's above that, and I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that he and his staff have done for us, and the community is better off for it. So I'll look forward to supporting the extension.
Thanks, Trustee No. Thank you.
Trustee Mack.
I just want to say a few things too, Chris. Thank you so much for everything you've done this year. I mean, I don't think we could have asked for a more challenging year to be thrown at you for your first year.
I hope not.
I think we could have set that maybe 2 months in, and then we doubled down, and then doubled down or tripled down. So, and then we got more coming. So, are you sure you want to do this? But also too, you know, let's face it, you had a tough act to follow. Jim was a very good superintendent for us. And I can say with all confidence, you have taken it to the next level. Nothing against Jim. I love Jim to death, but you've taken us into, I don't know, I just feel like we have a better structure right now even. And thank goodness you've been around for all this chaos. And I think you're growing too. I think you know you're growing, and we're glad to see it. So
yeah, one of the things that that gave me confidence about taking over this position was that Jim built such a strong foundation, and the two of us worked so well together to build such a fantastic team. And between, when you have a good foundation, it's easy to build on it, and when you have a good team of people to help you build it, it's that much easier. So yeah, the Jim's legacy is strong here, and I'm appreciative of that.
All right. Historically challenging year, and as a first-time superintendent, you did great work. You got us through this. You guided us through this along with your staff. And I know there's more work to be done, as everybody has said. And so we appreciate what you've done this last year and offering you this extension. So, all right. That. So we have a motion by Trustee Millerick, a second by Trustee Mack. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So that's 6-1. With the one opposed is Trustee Gasson. Okay, moving on to our last item, is that correct? Yes. All right, this is approval of a memorandum of understanding, MOU, between the superintendent and board to reduce his work year and salary for 2021. So I didn't even, as we presented the evaluation and all of that, typically Superintendent Koska is entitled to an increase in his salary if he does receive a satisfactory or above. I didn't even have to ask or anything. He offered this up to take a reduction in work days, and 8 days that he is taking 8 furlough days, which equates to about 3.5%, if not a little bit more maybe. And he is, wants, obviously we've asked everybody to come to the table, and he has done so in this respect. So I appreciate that as one trustee for doing that. And so that's what's coming forward. This is not a change in his contract. This is just an MOU for the 1 year. If there needs to be revisited in some way, we will obviously do that, I'm assuming, and that'll be a board decision collectively along with the superintendent. So any questions?
This is an action item, correct?
Yes, this is an action item to approve this 1-year memorandum of understanding that lays out that he will be taking 8 days in the 2021 year.
If I might chime in, this is, to clarify, this is the first of the multiple MOUs we're talking about in the budget stabilization proposals on the
Correct.
section. So just to be clear, this is one of multiple MOUs that we're looking to institute. And I want to thank Chris for, I'll use the phrase, modeling the way, but basically leading the way and getting this done, and doing so in a way that's certainly exemplary. So I'll move that we approve this.
Okay,
Debbie?
all right. Do I have a second before I go to Trustee Aguilar? Are you a second or?
No, I was gonna make a
Okay.
comment.
I have a second by Trustee Cooper. And then I have comment by Trustee Aguila and Trustee Gasson. So Trustee Aguila?
Okay, I wanted to just keep Debbie, if you could explain a little bit, the connection between the 3.5 and part of the law and keeping the law with the 3.5. If you could just explain that a little bit to those that may know.
I'm not sure that I understand what it's just that we met, the 8 days equates to the 3.5 that he would have gotten. He typically gets an increase every year.
And according to the MOU, and it's part of the keeping the law.
Yeah, so can I take a swing at that?
Yes,
I think,
please.
so in my contract, if I receive a satisfactory evaluation each year, then I will receive a 3.5% increase in compensation. So since I received that satisfactory evaluation tonight officially, that would have kicked in me receiving the 3.5% raise. And so what we're doing here with this MOU is I'm saying that I'm not going to take that 3.5% raise. I'm going to work 8 less days, and I'm going to give back that raise for this year so that I can help us get through this hard financial time. But the board, since you gave me a satisfactory evaluation, you had to give me that raise. So by law, I think that's the law you're talking about, Maria.
Yes. Yes.
And then I'm saying that's why we had to do this MOU, was to sort of say, even though by law you had to give it to me, I'm not going to take it. I'm going to refuse it. So I hope that helps.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have a little bit of that conversation. So maybe on
My
record.
pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Trustee
you.
Aguila. Trustee Gasson.
So I just wanted to add in after Trustee Mack and just say that it's a reflection of your character. And I truly appreciate that you are accepting those furlough days and as an example to the rest of your team. So thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we have a motion. There's no more other comments. We have a motion by Trustee Mack, a second by Trustee Cooper to approve the MOU with the regards to the superintendent and board to reduce his work year and salary for 2021. All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Okay. All right, board members, that concludes our meeting this evening. We do have a special meeting scheduled for July 14th. And so enjoy the next couple of weeks. Hopefully somebody will have some little vacation or something, but I know the district office is super busy trying to plan for the next year. So thank you. Good night, everybody.